You felt it, did not you? That sudden buzz on your phone, her name lighting up your screen after days, maybe weeks of silence. And in that exact moment, your heart did not just beat, it dropped. Because now you are stuck between two fears. Reply too fast and look desperate, or wait and risk losing control again. That is the game you have been pulled into. And the worst part? She already knows it. If you have ever felt confused, ignored, or emotionally pulled around in a relationship like this, what is about to be shared is not surface-level advice. It is the kind of psychological truth most people learn too late. Now, listen carefully. When she texts after silence, it is not random. It is never random. Silence is a move, and breaking that silence is another move. You need to understand that this is not just about communication. It is about control. Women do not always disappear because they have lost interest. Sometimes they disappear to see what happens to your energy when they are gone. Do you chase? Do you panic? Do you overthink? Or do you stay grounded? Because your reaction during silence tells her more about you than anything you ever said when things were good. And now she is back. But here is the truth most men do not want to hear. The moment she texts again is not your moment of relief. It is your moment of testing. She is not just reaching out. She is measuring you. She is asking, without saying it, did he stay the same man I left, or did he collapse without me? And if you respond the same way you always do, fast, eager, overly emotional, you answer that question immediately. You confirm that she still holds the power. That is why what you say next matters more than anything that came before. Not because of the words themselves, but because of what those words communicate about your emotional position. Are you still waiting for her? Or did your world keep moving without her? Because power in dating is not about being cold or manipulative. It is about emotional stability. It is about showing without trying that your peace was never dependent on her presence. And right now, she is looking for cracks, any sign that she can step back into your life without earning her place again. So if your instinct is to say, "Hey, I missed you," or "Where did you go?" understand this. You are handing her reassurance she did not earn. You are rewarding the silence, and once you reward that behavior, it will repeat. The philosopher Epictetus, one of the great Stoics, taught that we should not seek to have events happen as we wish, but to wish them to happen as they do happen. When she texts after silence, the event is her reaching out. You cannot control that, but you can control how you respond, and your response either aligns with your values or betrays them. What you are about to learn is not about playing games. It is about ending them. Because the moment you respond correctly, the dynamic shifts, and she feels it. Right now, she is waiting for something from you. Not just a reply, but a version of you she remembers. The old version. The one who reacted quickly. The one who filled silence with emotion. The one who made her feel like she still had access to your attention whenever she wanted. But here is where most people get it wrong. They think the goal is to say something clever, something impressive, something that wins her back. No, the goal is to stop giving emotional access away for free, because when she texts after silence, she is not just checking in on you. She is checking if she still affects you, and your first response either confirms that or completely disrupts it. Let this be very direct. If you reply with urgency, you are not showing love, you are showing availability. And availability without boundaries always lowers perceived value. The philosopher Seneca observed that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And when you waste your emotional energy on urgent replies to someone who has been silent, you are wasting the opportunity to demonstrate strength and self-respect. Your time, your attention, your emotional state, these are valuable. When you treat them as if they are not, others will treat them the same way. Notice something important about your mindset in moments like this. Your brain starts racing. You overthink tone, timing, emoji, whether to act casual or emotional. You start crafting a performance instead of a response. And that is the trap, because the moment you start performing, you are no longer grounded in yourself. You are reacting to her. And the truth is, she can feel that shift instantly, even through text. But if you pause, not to play games, not to manipulate, but to return to yourself, something changes. You stop responding from anxiety. You start responding from presence. And presence is powerful because it does not chase. It does not rush. It does not try to fix the silence. The philosopher Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, taught that the goal of life is to live in agreement with nature. And it is human nature to seek connection, but it is also human nature to protect one's own peace. When you respond from presence rather than anxiety, you are living in agreement with that nature. You are not fighting against your own instincts. You are honoring them. Now listen closely, because this is the psychological pivot most people miss. Her reaching out after silence is often not a commitment. It is an emotional check-in on her own curiosity. She wants to know, is he still there emotionally if I step away? And if you answer too eagerly, you unknowingly tell her, yes, I was waiting. But if you answer from calm detachment, not coldness, not arrogance, just emotional stability, you communicate something completely different. I am not moved by absence. I am not shaken by distance. My life does not pause. That energy is felt immediately, and it creates a subtle shift in her perception. Because now she cannot predict you anymore. She cannot assume access. She cannot assume emotional availability. And unpredictability, when grounded in calm confidence, is what resets dynamics. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic, wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your thoughts are colored by calm detachment, your soul reflects that. And others will feel it. They will sense that you are someone who cannot be easily shaken. And that sense of stability is deeply attractive. But here is where you must be careful. This is not about ignoring her to create value. That is childish. That is still emotional reaction, just inverted. This is about removing urgency from your response. Because urgency is what exposes attachment. And attachment without balance always creates imbalance in how you are treated. So before you reply to her message, do not ask, what should I say? Ask something far more important. What energy am I about to confirm about myself? Because once you send it, you cannot take it back. The philosopher Epictetus taught that no great thing is created suddenly. And the kind of emotional stability that commands respect is no exception. It is built through the accumulation of small choices, each one building on the last. Each time you pause before responding, you build that stability. Each time you choose calm over urgency, you build that stability. And as you build it, it becomes part of who you are. Now, let us talk about the moment you actually respond, because this is where most people lose everything without realizing it. She texts you after silence, and your thumb is already hovering. Your emotions are already involved. Even if you have not replied yet, you have already reacted internally. That is the part nobody sees, but she would feel it instantly if it leaks into your message. So the first rule is simple. Do not carry urgency into your response. You are not trying to impress her. You are not trying to fix the silence, and you are definitely not trying to win her back in one message. That mindset alone puts you beneath the dynamic. Now, here is the truth most people never hear clearly enough. Her return after silence does not automatically mean emotional reconnection. It often means curiosity, comfort-seeking, or testing emotional availability. She might be checking if you are still predictable, still easy, still waiting. And if you respond like nothing happened emotionally, but everything is still available to her, she gets confirmation that she can step in and out of your life without consequence. That is where your power quietly disappears. So, what do you actually do? You respond like a man who is not emotionally displaced by absence, not distant, not cold, not trying to punish, just unaffected, because emotional stability is not silence. It is not games. It is not delay tactics. It is the absence of emotional collapse when someone reappears. The philosopher Cleanthes, who succeeded Zeno as the head of the Stoic school, wrote that the fates guide the willing but drag the unwilling. When you are willing to respond from stability rather than need, you are guided towards strength. When you are unwilling, when you let urgency control you, you are dragged into weakness. Now, here is where psychology becomes important. When someone leaves and returns, your brain wants closure. It wants explanation. It wants emotional symmetry. Where did you go? Why now? But asking those questions too quickly shifts you into a position of emotional need, and emotional need always lowers your perceived stability. Instead, your response should do something very specific. It should acknowledge her presence without rewarding the silence that came before it. That means no emotional overcompensation, no sudden warmth to rebuild connection, no frustration disguised as curiosity, because all of those are emotional reactions. And emotional reactions are what she is subconsciously measuring. Think of it like this. She is not just reading your words. She is reading your state, and your state is revealed in how much control she still has over your emotional tempo. If she can still accelerate you, she still has influence. If she can still slow you down emotionally, she still has influence. But if you remain steady, regardless of her timing, something shifts. Now, she is not evaluating how much you want her. She is evaluating whether she can affect you the way she used to, and that uncertainty creates recalibration because now she cannot rely on your emotional predictability anymore. And unpredictability, when calm, is what forces respect to return into the dynamic. But remember this carefully. The goal is never to punish her with distance. The goal is to remove emotional dependence from your replies, because the moment your response is no longer shaped by her absence, you stop losing power in her presence. The philosopher Hierocles, a Stoic who wrote extensively on ethics, observed that we should approach others as we would approach ourselves, with patience and understanding. When you approach her text with patience and understanding, when you do not rush to fill the silence with emotion, you are treating yourself with the same respect you would want from anyone else. At this point, something subtle is happening in your mind, and you might not even notice it. You start interpreting her message as hope. Hope that she missed you. Hope that she is coming back for something real. Hope that this silence meant something emotional on her side. And this is exactly where people get pulled back into the cycle, because hope feels good, but it is also dangerous when it is not grounded in behavior. Let this be clear. A message after silence is not proof of emotional commitment. It is only proof of re-entry, nothing more. And how you respond determines whether you stay in control of your emotional state or slide back into old patterns. The philosopher Musonius Rufus, a Stoic teacher who profoundly influenced Epictetus, wrote that we should not use our words to command, but to persuade and to teach. And the greatest persuasion is not about convincing someone of your worth. It is about demonstrating it through your actions. When you respond with stability, you are persuading her through your actions, not your words. Now, understand something psychologically important. When someone disappears and returns, your nervous system remembers the uncertainty. Even if you act calm, your body remembers the confusion, the waiting, the unanswered questions. That is why your first instinct is often emotional. Relief, curiosity, even excitement. But she is not just responding to your words. She is responding to your emotional stability under uncertainty. And this is where most people fail without realizing it, because instead of staying steady, they try to repair the gap instantly. They over-explain. They over-engage. They try to restore emotional closeness immediately. But emotionally mature connection does not restart with intensity. It restarts with balance. If she stepped away and came back, the dynamic cannot continue as if nothing shifted internally. That would signal one thing, that your emotional baseline is unchanged regardless of how she behaves. And that is where self-respect quietly disappears from the interaction. Now, here is the real shift you need to understand. You are not trying to win her back with your response. You are observing whether she can re-enter your life without emotional chaos. Because someone who values your presence will not want to re-enter in a way that disrupts your peace. And someone who is testing access will expect you to adjust immediately to their timing again. So your response should reflect something very specific. I am here, but I am not emotionally reset by your return. Not in words, in energy. Because when your emotional state remains unchanged by her absence, something powerful happened. She no longer feels like she can reset the dynamic at will, and that creates a psychological shift. Now, she is no longer just reaching out to reconnect. She is trying to understand where she stands in a system that did not collapse without her, and that realization changes how she engages with you next, because people do not challenge stability, they adjust to it. Now, we get to the part most people misunderstand completely. She is back in your life, at least in text. The conversation has started again, and now your mind starts doing something very dangerous. It starts trying to secure her. You begin to think in terms of keeping her interested, not messing this up, saying the right things. And the moment that mindset appears, you are no longer leading the interaction. You are managing anxiety. Let this slow down for you. When someone returns after silence, the real question is not, how do I keep her here? The real question is this return aligned, or is it just emotional impulse? Because people come back for many reasons. Loneliness, curiosity, boredom, nostalgia, ego-checking, comfort-seeking. But very few come back with clarity. And you can feel the difference in how they communicate if you are not emotionally entangled. The philosopher Epictetus reminded us that we should not be upset by what we do not have, but rejoice in what we do. When she texts after silence, you have a choice. You can rejoice in the contact, or you can remain grounded and observe whether the contact is meaningful. The choice is yours. Now, here is where emotional intelligence matters more than attraction tactics. If you immediately match her energy, you assume her return is meaningful. If you immediately increase emotional warmth, you assume stability has already been restored. But nothing has been restored yet. There is only contact again, not connection. And if you confuse contact with connection, you start over-investing emotionally into something that has not earned it. That is how people repeat cycles. So, what do you do instead? You slow your internal reaction, not your external behavior, but your internal urgency. You let the conversation exist without trying to define it too quickly, because people who are unsure often reveal themselves in layers, not in one message. And if you rush to assign meaning, you miss the truth of what is actually happening. Now, listen carefully. The strongest position you can hold in this moment is not emotional withdrawal and not emotional pursuit. It is emotional neutrality with awareness. You are not punishing her for leaving. You are not over-rewarding her for returning. You are simply observing consistency, because consistency is what determines value, not timing, not words, not apology, energy. And when you stop over-investing in the return moment, something shifts again. She starts to notice that her presence does not create emotional chaos in you anymore. No spike of excitement, no desperation to hold the conversation, no sudden emotional overcommitment, just grounded interaction. And that is unfamiliar to most dynamics like this, because most people unconsciously reward inconsistency with emotional availability. But when you do not, you interrupt the pattern. And when patterns get interrupted, people either step back and reassess or try harder to regain influence. Either way, you are no longer predictable in the old sense. And unpredictability, when calm, forces recalibration in how you are treated, because now she cannot assume that her return automatically restores emotional access. And that uncertainty changes everything silently. Now we reach the point where everything becomes clear, quietly, without drama, without arguments, without explanations. Because the real power shift does not happen when she texts you. It happens after you respond. What most people do not realize is this. Her next behavior is shaped less by what you say and more by what you do not react to emotionally. If she came back expecting the same version of you, quick replies, emotional availability, subtle reassurance, and she does not find it, something internal changes for her. Not immediately dramatic, not obvious, but real. Because she expected a certain emotional response, and instead she got stability. And stability is hard to manipulate. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote that we have power over our minds, not outside events. When you respond with stability, you are exercising power over your own mind. You are not letting her text control your emotional state. And that power is felt, even if it is not discussed. Now here is the truth that ties everything together. When someone leaves and returns, they are subconsciously testing one thing. Do I still have the same emotional access I had before I left? And your entire power lies in how you answer that. Not with words, but with consistency. If you over-reward the return, you teach that absence has no consequence. If you over-punish it, you reveal emotional instability. But if you remain steady, calm, present, not over-invested, you communicate something rare. My life does not destabilize based on your presence or absence. And that is what resets dynamics. Because now she is no longer interacting with someone who reacts to her timing. She is interacting with someone who has their own emotional baseline. And people adjust to baselines, not intensity. This is where attraction shifts in a deeper way. Not because you played it right, but because you stopped outsourcing emotional control to her behavior. Something important happens when that shift becomes clear. She starts to feel the gap between expectation and reality. She expected emotional re-entry. She got emotional steadiness. She expected familiarity. She got boundaries without explanation, and that creates reflection. Not always immediate action, not always apology, but reflection. Because now she cannot easily categorize you in the same way anymore. You are no longer the version of you that reacts to silence. You are the version that remains intact through it, and that changes how you are perceived over time. But here is the final truth you need to understand, one that most people avoid. Your goal was never to get the perfect reply. Your goal was to stop being emotionally moved by inconsistent access. Because once you reach that state, you do not need scripts, tricks, or perfect timing. You simply respond from stability. And when stability becomes your default, you stop losing power in moments that used to control you. The philosopher Seneca wrote that the greatest cure for the mind is trust in the one who is advising. When you trust your own judgment, when you trust your own emotional stability, you do not need to look outside yourself for validation. You respond from within, and that inner trust is what makes you unshakable. This is the deeper truth. When she texts after silence, she is giving you an opportunity. Not an opportunity to win her back, but an opportunity to demonstrate who you have become in her absence. And who you have become is someone who is not defined by her attention. Someone who is not desperate for her validation. Someone who is whole and complete with or without her. That person is not just attractive. That person is free. And freedom, as the Stoics understood, is the only goal worth pursuing. The philosopher Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. When you master your own emotional responses, you are truly free. And that freedom is what makes you irresistible, not because you are trying to be, but because you have stopped trying to be anything other than yourself.